Well, good day, viewers. We're in between jobs, so I thought I'd try and diagnose this no start condition on this 2007 Yukon XL. It was towed here yesterday and dropped off, and customer said they had recharged the battery. I noticed there's no interior light and no power whatsoever, so I don't know if the battery's disconnected, so we're going to start by putting a booster on it. So it's got a fairly new battery in it. I'm not a fan of these universal cable clamps, so we will fix that after, but that's not causing the problem. The battery's dead. I've got a booster hooked up to it now, and the interior lights come on as soon as I hooked up the booster. So let's have a look at some warning lights on the dash. Listen for the fuel pump to run. There's the key doesn't turn in the ignition. There we go. I heard the fuel pump run. The check engine light is on. It runs. Service airbag. Hood open. Service battery charging system. Service suspension system. So I wonder if it's got a parasitic draw on the battery or from the alternator or something. Let's bring it over to the shop door. Well, according to the voltmeter on the dash, it's showing over 14 volts. It's charging, so we're going to check the charging system output with a voltmeter, and then we'll do a network scan. So the voltage at my booster battery now indicates 14.46, which is adequate. It looks relatively clean. I'm going to look at diode ripple. It looks pretty good. Doesn't have any significantly bad diodes. Now I don't know why it was saying service charging system, unless they've got that battery clamp is affecting it, but nevertheless it is charging. So let's do a network scan. So it's auto ID'd the vehicle. It has 331,721 kilometers on it. WNM 634. I think it's got some network issues, and that could be causing a parasitic draw or killing the battery. Let's do a code scan. It's got all kinds of Christmas tree messages coming up on the dash. We'll see how many controllers it talks to. Crankshaft system variation not learned. Well, that happens after an ECM replacement. Lost communications with ABS. Yeah, network problem. Passenger presence system erratic. Front end sensor. Rollover sensor. Option configuration error. No CAN bus message with gateway instrument panel cluster. Lost communication with restraints. Lost communication with restraints. Battery voltage above or below threshold. Let's see what else. Lost communication with radio. It's an aftermarket radio, it looks like. Lost communication with door control module. High-speed communication circuit. Passenger compartment. Lost communication with body control. Just what I wanted today was a network problem. No CAN bus with gateway. What I'm not seeing here is the ABS module. Lost communication with body. Now where's the ABS module? One thing about the Snap-on scan tool and most aftermarket scan tools, if a module doesn't respond during a code scan, it just ignores it like it's optional. Well, let's back out. Got into 20 computers. I believe there should be more than that. Let's try the ABS. Codes menu. Display codes. No communication. So I wonder if the ABS module is taking down the network. I've had the ABS modules fail on these generation of trucks, take down the CAN bus signal. You know what? I'm going to clear all the codes first of all, because we have the ability to do that with it running on a GM, unlike some manufacturers. And then we're going to do a rescan and see what came back. So it detected 20 controllers, but I don't see the ABS in there. Let's try another code scan. Well, that crankshaft variation relearn, like I said, that code usually pops up after a PCM reflash event. That'll definitely turn on the check engine light. Lost communication with the ABS. Yeah. Now this should have a fuel pump driver module in the rear, or a trailer brake control module in the rear, which is after the ABS. So the ABS might have failed, but it could be just a blown fuse for the ABS as well. So we got a whole bunch of communication codes, crankshaft variation codes, high-speed CAN bus, front end sensors, got a sensor problem. Front end sensor 2, I believe, is the one on the passenger side. Probably needs a crash sensor. Option configuration error. I wonder if somebody's put used parts in this thing. Okay, well, let's see, where should we start? Let's try by checking powers to the ABS module first off. So I checked the 25 amp fuse in location number 9 under the hood, and it's good. I pulled the fuse out, terminals work pretty clean. Put it back in again. I want to make sure that that hasn't restored communication. No, it hasn't. So I'm going to crawl underneath the truck quickly and have a look at the connector in case it's ripped off, but I know the truck wouldn't start if it was, because like I said, the network is after that. I think we're going to be checking network termination resistance next. So there's the CAN bus signal, which looks a little wavy. Now it's not uncommon for it to be a bit wavy, but I noticed the bias voltage on CAN H, which is the yellow trace, is around 1.9 volts, and this one's 2.1. This one should be higher. It should be about 2.6, and this one should be about 2.4. So I've got a breakout box and connected in here, and I'm using pin 6 and 14 of the DLC, and pin 4, I think, 4 or 5 for ground. So I'm going to check terminating resistance here, but I got to shut it off and wait for activity to stop, or disconnect the vehicle battery. I think I'll wait a few minutes for it to stop here. So the activity is stopped, but there's still a bias voltage on the CAN bus. Oh, it's dropping now. I might have to disconnect the negative battery post. So I disconnected the battery, so I eliminated bias voltage on the network. So I'm going to put the ohm meter in across 6 and 14, and it should read 60 ohms plus or minus 2. So I'm going to go to a graphing multimeter. Put the leads together to zero it. And we don't need 400K. 400 ohms is good. And I'm going to go between 6 and 14. And we got 62 ohms. So the network isn't shorted, but something is causing a problem, and I suspect that ABS module is causing a problem. So the network isn't open or shorted. Well, I'm going to crawl underneath there and have a look. So I just unplugged the ABS module, and the voltage is sitting at about 1.27. Let's see what it looks like. Definitely a lot cleaner. Gotta move the trigger down. Definitely looks cleaner. Now it'll probably quit in a few seconds because the fuel pump driver is downstream, and disconnecting that, unless this one's still got a fuel pump relay. It hasn't quit yet. Let's see the fuel gauge if it's working. Yeah, the fuel gauge is... Well, we're going to check powers and grounds to the ABS module now. Let's see where that lives. My hoist is tied up, so I'm working on the floor. There's the connector. So we're going to get a pin out for the connector and check the powers and grounds at it. So there are 3 fuses involved in the ABS. There's the electronic brake control, EBCM. So I checked fuse number 9, and it's good, but there's also fuse 64 and fuse 62. Those are probably J-case fuses. Let's have a look at those. So fuse 69 is this one, which is 60 amps, it says. WFHS. And 62 heavy duty ABS, 60 amp. So that one's there, but there's no fuse in this location. And I don't know if they're supposed to be. There's so many variations of ABS on these vehicles. WFHS 60 amps. Let's double check the schematic again. This is why it's always good to print off the schematic, because in the distance it took me to walk from the information system, I read 64 on the screen and I went and looked at 69. It's 64. 64 is this one right here. So 62 and 64. 64 is ABS 1 and 62 is heavy duty ABS. So those 2 fuses are there. I don't know what that 69 fuse, it's probably an option the truck doesn't have. So there is a connector fuse, or a connector view of this EBCM connector. I got it unplugged. So it's probably 13, 38, and 1 and 25. Let's see. 1 is battery positive. 13 is ground. 28. Oh, it's the other numbers. 38 and 25. Those large terminals. Battery positive is 25. So I'm going to print this off and we're going to load test those 4 circuits. So these are the 4 large terminals on the connector. These 1 and 25 are power, battery positive, key off power, and 13 and 38 are ground. So I've got a headlight connected in here, as you can see, between that one and that one, that one and that one, and that one and that one. So both powers and grounds are good. Pin grip feels pretty adequate, so I would suspect that the module is gone south, which is not uncommon for these modules. This thing's getting a little long in the tooth, this truck. I'm going to have a chat with the customer. I'm going to maybe lab scope network activity on the CAN bus down here There's CAN in and CAN out, 26 and 27, and 14 and 15. I got to look at the schematic to figure out which one's in and which one's out, but I'm sure we got CAN activity here, but I'll check it. So here is the high-speed CAN bus from pin 6 and 14. It goes to the junction box under the left side of the dash, then to the body control module, out of the body control module to the transmission control module, and to a terminating resistor in the ECM. But the other side of the network goes through another connector at the junction box under the dash. Now this vehicle has OnStar, so it goes through the OnStar module and then back to page 2 here. And you're not got to know what all these RPO codes, so I use a website called Comp9 to decode the RPO codes. This has NP8, which is a transfer case 2-speed active. So it goes through that, and then it has JL4 ABS. There's 4 different brake options, so you need the RPO code. So it's JL4, it's pin 26, 14, 27, and 15. And this also has Z55, which is active suspension. So it goes through the active suspension control module, and remember we had no communication with that either. And then off to the transfer termination resistor here, and then back. So this wire goes here, this wire goes here. So we're going to identify pin, oh, here we are. I can't see that. I got to get my magnifying glass. 26 and 14, so I'll write it bigger, are coming in, and 27 and 15 are going out. So theoretically, if we jumper at the ABS module 26 to 27 and 14 to 15, it should restore communication with the suspension control module. And I don't think we had communication with it before, but I don't recall seeing there was a service suspension system message on the dash. So we're going to check for network activity at pin 26 and 14 at that ABS connector. Even though the terminating resistance was good, like right now if we were to measure it, it would be 120 because this resistor is out of the circuit. So I'm 90% sure we need an ABS module, but I'd like to make it 99% sure. So I got the lab scope on pin 14, which is CAN low. You can see I got activity. But when I go on pin 14 of this ABS module, I don't get any activity on 14 or 26, which are the 2 wires in, 26 and 14. But I have communication with the transfer case control module. In fact, I have a code for loss of communication with the ABS module now. And of course I don't have communication with this because I have the connector disconnected. But I don't know why I can't get any activity on pins 26 and 14. I'll try again. Okay, I had it in the wrong end. 26 and 14 are on the end with the power wires, and I have network activity. So I'm going to put a temporary jumper between 26 and 27 and 14 and 15 to extend the network back to the module in the back, see if I got communication with it then. So this is what I'm going to use to bypass the ABS module. Make sure you don't use wires greater than 24 thousandths of an inch. I measure them with a mic. These are solid core wires, so they will act like a probe. So I've jumped 26 to 27 and 14 to 15. Now let's try and see if we got communication with the suspension control module. So there's the code I had for the ABS loss of communication in the transfer case module, so I know the network's good up to that. Let's go into electronic suspension control and see if we got communication with that. We got no communication. Now, are my connections bad? I'm going to double check my connections. Well, I've double checked my connections and I got no communication with electronic suspension control module. Let's do another network code scan. I'm going to clear all the codes now because we need a topology map snap-on. I don't have a scanner that does that yet. I got a MaxiSys Elite, a couple years old, and I've got a ThinkTool Pro, but it doesn't do that. So let's do a code scan, post scan again. Lost communication with the anti-lock brake module, front end sensor, option configuration error. We got 20 controllers before, including the ECM in OBD2, so 19 actually. Airbag module, body control module. Parking assist module, VIN identification number information error. Don't like that. Lost communication with ABS and the crankshaft code. 20 controllers, but we got no communication with the suspension control module. So is it the suspension control module taking down the network? Oh boy. I'm going to check terminating resistance again. So the network activity looks textbook perfect now with the ABS module disconnected. Now you get a little bit of waviness that appears to be normal when the system is booting up. And then it straightens out. I've seen that before on lots of these GM trucks, and that's nothing to be concerned about. Let's see. Oh yeah, so it's going to measure terminating resistance. So the network's good now at 61 ohms, and I predict if I unplug one of those wires on the ABS bypass, it'll go to 120. Let's give it a try. So I unplugged one wire and it went to 115. So the suspension control module is offline, but is that my problem, or is it the ABS problem? So the fancy electronic suspension control module lives above the spare tire under the rear of the vehicle. I really need to get this on a hoist. I think I'm going to leave the ABS module unplugged with it bypassed temporarily, and I'm going to see why the battery went dead if there's a parasitic draw on this thing. I still have to talk to the customer. So I installed my disconnect switch between the negative post of the battery and the negative battery cable, turned it on, started the vehicle and ran it. Now I'm about to open the disconnect switch with the ammeter connected in series. And okay, so instantly we've got over 500 milliamps, over 2 amps, 2.1 amps. Sorry, didn't see, I wasn't zoomed in on it correctly. So we need to wait now. This screen is 30 seconds. It's dropped down to 940 milliamps. $770 milliamps. So we'll let it sit for a few minutes and see if it drops even further. We're looking for a target under 50. But something killed the battery. The customer said they replaced the battery and charged the battery before they had it towed out here. Now I suppose it could be the ABS module. I do have it unplugged. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. So this time I remember to unplug my diagnostic interface. Last time I was doing this test, I traced it down to a specific fuse and it fed the DLC, and I went, Oh, forgot to unplug the VCM. So we're going to change the range here now. We're down to under 500 milliamps. We're 295 milliamps. And it's been about 5 minutes. So we're down to 125 milliamps. And it's been 12 minutes. It's 3:25 now. We'll wait another 10 minutes or so. So it's been a half an hour at least. And we're still down, we're only down to 123 milliamps. I was checking voltage drops across the fuses. This particular fuse here, this 25 amp fuse, which I believe is for the wipers, we got to set this down. So it's got about 11, 12 millivolts drop across it. Make sure I'm on the connection. So let's pull that fuse out and see what happens. That's for the wipers, apparently. I don't know if that's front wipers or rear wipers. Well, nothing changed. Still 122 milliamps. The fuse is a little oxidized. I'll check it again. Well, I had to open the door and close the latch, which I should have done before. And so that reset the BCM, so we're going to have to wait another half an hour now. It's 3:45. And pulling that 25 amp fuse for the wipers made no difference. Now the rear wiper is busted off, but I'm not sure if that's for the rear wiper or the front wiper. And if the rear wiper was trying to park, I've seen that before, it would be a lot higher than 125 milliamps or 100 milliamps. That's about the amount it takes to turn on a relay control. So let's wait another half hour. So I'm sure that that's an aftermarket radio, which could be causing the issue. And then inside here I see some hocus pocus. There's a couple of fuses in here. That's probably a remote car starter, and they didn't give me the remote for it. Although the factory remote has built-in car starter, so I'm not sure what those, that's that button up there. It looks like the round circle. Well, there's some hocus pocus going on in here. I'm not sure what it's for. I'm gonna have a look in there. So this third fuse up from the bottom on the top row here, this 10 amp one, has about 3 millivolts drop across it. I'll double check it. Now it's 0.1. Yeah, that's on the third fuse. So I got no voltage drops on any of the fuses. My draw is dropped to 82 milliamps, 75 to 82 milliamps. Now I don't know if it's this aftermarket starter or whatever this is in here, or if it's the aftermarket radio, but I would think that we would see a voltage drop across the radio fuse. I wonder if we can disconnect the radio fuse. Oh, and I plugged the ABS module back in again. So the ABS module is back in the circuit. I also checked to make sure there was nothing plugged into the accessory plugs. There's one on the back here. I don't see any other ones, unless there's one in here. Yes, there is. Nothing in there. Nothing plugged in there. But that should have showed up on an accessory fuse. I wonder if that's factory as well. Well, fuse 40 30 amp and 41 15 amp are for the amplifier and the radio, or the rear seat entertainment. I pulled both fuses out one at a time, and the current draw jumped from 82 milliamps up to 160. And now I have a voltage drop measured across this fuse now. That's the problem with pulling fuses, because you could wake up a module and then it doesn't power down correctly, doesn't power up correctly. So you really need to turn the disconnect switch back on, start the vehicle, shut it off, and wait another half an hour. So I found the fuse cover sitting on the passenger seat, but disturbingly enough, this is also sitting on the passenger seat. Now, is this the original one from this vehicle or a used one from this vehicle? I've tried to get a hold of the customer a couple of times and I can't reach them. The lowest I can get this draw down to is 83 milliamps, 80 milliamps. And I'm wondering if it's got the wrong VCM in it, the wrong configuration. Obviously somebody's been working on this vehicle. That definitely is an aftermarket radio, and I'm pretty sure that rear seat entertainment system is not factory, because I have one in my truck and it doesn't look like that. But I need to talk to the customer.